To understand how each race came about, let's start from the very beginning. Tolkien's mythology begins with Eru Ilúvatar, the supreme singular deity who exists before all things. Creating the universe is not easy, so Ilúvatar creates the demigod Ainur, angelic beings that would become his assistants. He teaches them to sing, and through their music, they create the world known as Arda, within which Middle-earth exists. There are two tiers of those angelic demigods. The higher ones are Valar. Each Vala is associated with a different aspect of the world. Manwe with the air, Ulmo with the sea, Aule with craft and creation, and so on. The Valar are assisted by the Maiar, the lower-tiered Ainur, aka angelic demigods, who also enter the world to serve Valar and guide its inhabitants. That brings us to the first important race, the Wizards, also called the Istari. Though they appear as elderly men, they are actually powerful Maiar, the lower-tiered angels. They are sent by Valar during the Third Age to aid the free peoples of Middle-earth in their struggle against the Dark Power. The Istari were chosen for their wisdom and strength, but they were deliberately given physical limitations to ensure they would guide and inspire rather than dominate or rule. There are 5 known wizards. Gandalf, originally known as Olorin, was the wisest of the Istari. He took a humble and patient approach to his mission, befriending elves, men, and hobbits, which we will talk about in just a bit. Saruman the White was initially the leader of the Istari. He was wise and powerful, but over time got corrupted. Radagast the Brown was closely associated with nature and spent much of his time in the wild. Alatar and Palando, also known as the Blue Wizards, traveled far into the Far East and established their own cults. So of the 5 Istari, only Gandalf stayed true to his mission. While some races and creatures are created by other Valar, the Ilúvatar himself directly creates 2 races, the Elves and Men. Elves are the firstborn children of Ilúvatar. They awoke under the stars by the waters of Cuvinin during the years of the trees, long before the rise of men. The Valar loved the elves the most because they were so godlike. In the hope of saving these fair beings from the evils and dangers of Middle-earth, they invited the elves to live in Valinor, the heaven-like realm to the west that is often called the Undying Lands. Some elves accepted and became the High Elves or Eldar, while others remained in Middle-earth, known as the Avari. They are beings of great beauty, wisdom, and grace. Unlike other races, elves are immortal, bound to the world until its end. They do not age as men do, and although they can be slain or die of grief, they do not die of sickness or old age. Elves are closely tied to nature, possessing heightened senses and a profound understanding of the natural world. They have a deep appreciation for music, art, and craftsmanship. Elves are also formidable warriors, though they generally prefer peace and the pursuit of knowledge. They are skilled archers and swordsmen, and their agility and sharp senses make them nearly unmatched in combat. However, the most favorite creations of Ilúvatar are the imperfect men. Unlike elves, men are mortal, with brief lives compared to the immortal firstborn. This mortality, often referred to as the gift of men, is both a blessing and a curse. Having an ultimate deadline drives their ambition and achievements to get things done. Men are also not bound by fate, and therefore are the only ones with true free will. They can shape their own destinies with their own actions. When they die, they leave Middle-earth, and only the Eru knows where they go. Men are spread across Middle-earth with a wide range of cultures, languages, and societies. The most renowned groups include the Númenóreans. Númenor, their island kingdom, became the most powerful realm of men but later went on a downfall due to pride and the desire for immortality. The survivors of Númenor established the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor. Other notable groups of men include the Rohirrim, known for their horsemanship and warrior culture, and the men of the East and South, who often fell under the influence of Sauron, the Dark Lord we will talk about in just a little bit. Hobbits, also known as halflings, are a small and peaceful race living in the Shire, a pastoral region of Middle-earth. Tolkien wasn't as clear about the hobbits as he was about elves and men. However, it's heavily implied that hobbits evolved from the first men that Ilúvatar placed in a slumber in Middle-earth, as evidenced by the Stor's hobbits, who still resembled men in that they were taller and could grow beards. Like men, hobbits are mortal and they possess the same freedom of will as men. The idea here is that while this freedom made some men ambitious, leading them to create large kingdoms and wage war, other groups headed for the hills and lived modest lives, developing a love for the simple things of life, like nature and food. As for the dwarves, many fans mistook them to be the same as the hobbits because of their small height. But these are 2 completely different races. So remember that before Ilúvatar created the universe, he made the Valar, demigods that would help him make and run the world. Before the elves woke from their sleep in Middle-earth, one Vala named Auli grew impatient. He was eager to guide the children of Ilúvatar and therefore decided to make his own creatures. These were the dwarves, and although Ole had the power to animate them, he didn't possess the secret flame and couldn't give them true life. What Ole did here was technically forbidden, so he was in a bit of trouble when Ilúvatar discovered what his Vala had done. However, the deity recognized that all his creations came from a place of love, rather than a desire for the power of creation. So he breathed true life into the dwarves, placed them into a slumber, and allowed them to wake up in Middle-earth sometime after the elves. From then on, Ilúvatar called the dwarves his adopted children. Dwarves have exceptional craftsmanship, mining, and stonework. They are shorter and more robust than men, with a strong affinity for mountains and underground realms like Erebor and Moria. Dwarves are fiercely loyal to their kin and are often seen as gruff or secretive by other races. Ents, placed on Middle-earth as shepherds of the trees at the request of Yavanna, a Valar who was in charge of all the things that grow on Earth in Arda. The Ents were always sentient creatures, but first learned to speak after the elves started to converse with them. They were in charge of protecting certain forests from orcs and other dangers, and are some of the oldest beings in Middle-earth. They are tree-like creatures that began to look more and more like the trees that they herded, transforming in form over the millennia. Ents are quite strong, as Merry and Pippin can attest. At one time, there were female Entwives, but they were lost some time ago, and though the Ents still look for them, they are nowhere to be found. The Eagles, also known as the Great Eagles, are majestic, sentient beings created by Manwë, the king of the Valar, to be his messengers and watch over the world. They are enormous birds of prey with wingspans large enough to carry men and other creatures. The eagles possess great wisdom, keen eyesight, and a deep understanding of the world, making them powerful allies in the fight against evil. Now back to the gods. The Supreme Ilúvatar is an all-good and all-powerful being, so none of the evil in the world is created by him. One of his superstars, Valar, is Melkor, later known as Morgoth, who becomes corrupted by pride and desires to dominate Arda, the known world. Melkor introduces discord into the music of the creation, sowing the seeds of evil. After descending into Arda, he becomes the first Dark Lord, waging wars against the other Valar and spreading chaos. His rebellion leads to the creation of many of the evils that plague Middle-earth, including orcs, dragons, Balrogs, etc. The history of Middle-earth, especially during the First Age, is largely defined by the wars between Melkor and the forces of good. Now, notice that although powerful, Morgoth doesn't have the capability to create life, so he captures Ilúvatar's existing creations and twists them into evil beings of his own. Elves became orcs, kings of men became Nazgûl, Ents became trolls, and Maiar, the lower-tier Valar, became Balrogs. Orcs, a malevolent and corrupted race serving as the primary foot soldiers of the Dark Lords. They were once elves, twisted and mutilated by Morgoth through dark sorcery and torture in the early days of Middle-earth. This corruption stripped them of their beauty and grace, leaving them deformed, cruel, and filled with hatred. Orcs are characterized by their grotesque appearance. With misshapen bodies, sharp teeth, and coarse, leathery skin, they thrive in darkness, often dwelling in caves, mountains, and the deep recesses of fortresses like Mordor and Isengard. Orcs are brutal and enjoy inflicting pain, both on their enemies and on each other. They are fierce warriors, though generally lacking in discipline and strategy unless commanded by a strong leader like Sauron or Saruman. While they are driven by a deep-seated hatred for all that is good and beautiful, they are also inherently cowardly, often fleeing when faced with a superior force. Their society is brutal and hierarchical, with the strongest and most cunning orcs dominating the weaker ones. In the movie, the gone-bad wizard Saruman creates another evil race, the Uruk-hai, through an experimental mixture of orcs and goblin men. The Uruk-hai were faster, smarter, stronger, and larger than orcs. And while orcs will generally refuse to travel during the day and would be severely weakened if they had to, the Uruk-hai could do this with few problems. The Nazgûl, also known as the Black Riders or simply the Nine, were 9 men who had succumbed to Sauron's power by wearing rings of power, which gave them immortality but reduced them to invisible wraiths, servants bound to the power of the One Ring and completely under Sauron's control. Trolls are large, brutish creatures of great strength but limited intelligence, often serving as enforcers and shock troops for the Dark Forces. They were originally created by Morgoth by twisting Ents. But unlike the Ents, trolls are creatures of darkness with little connection to the natural world. Trolls are typically depicted as massive, with thick, stone-like skin that makes them difficult to harm with conventional weapons. There are several types of trolls in Middle-earth, including stone trolls, cave trolls, and Olog-hai, a more advanced breed created by Sauron that can withstand sunlight, unlike other trolls who turn to stone when exposed to the sun. Dragons are among the most fearsome and powerful creatures in Middle-earth. They were not created but bred from other animals by Morgoth. Dragons come in various forms, including fire-breathing types, like Smaug and cold drakes, which lack the ability to breathe fire. Dragons have immense size, great physical strength, and near-impenetrable scales. They are also highly intelligent and cunning, with a deep-seated greed for treasure. In Tolkien's mythology, dragons represent the themes of greed, corruption, and destruction. Wargs are large, intelligent, and malevolent wolf-like creatures that serve as mounts and allies to the orcs in Middle-earth. They are believed to have originated as a corrupted or twisted form of natural wolves. Wargs are typically found in the wild regions of the north, such as the Misty Mountains, where they live in packs and hunt both animals and travelers. Wargs are more than mere beasts. They possess a sinister cunning and often work in coordination with orcs, especially during raids and battles. Their appearance is fearsome, with sharp teeth, powerful jaws, and a predatory gait. But those above are not the most fearsome dark creatures. That title belongs to Balrogs, ancient and powerful demons. They are not just dark creatures, they are the original Mire spirit, the lower-tier demigods created by Iluvatar, corrupted by Morgoth during the early days of Arda's creation. They are beings of shadow and flame, often described as towering figures wreathed in fire, with great wings that spread darkness. Balrogs wield whips of flame and swords of fire. So in one of the most iconic moments of The Lord of the Rings, when the Balrogs encounters with Gandalf, it was two lower-tier angelic demigods Mire, facing and fighting each other. Last but certainly not least, we have to talk about Sauron, also originally a Maya spirit. Once a servant of the Vala Uli, Sauron was initially drawn to order, craftsmanship, and the desire to shape the world. However, he became corrupted by Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, and gradually transformed into a being consumed by a lust for power and control. Sauron became Morgoth's most trusted lieutenant during the First Age, orchestrating many of his master's most devastating actions. After Morgoth's defeat, Sauron rose to become the new Dark Lord, dedicating himself to conquering Middle-earth and bending all life to his will. Sauron is a symbol of ultimate corruption and tyranny, representing the dangers of unchecked power and the corrupting influence of absolute control.